trauma affects us all in different ways, but also in very similar ways as well. I understand that you've experienced some pretty drastic sexual assault by multiple perpetrators.
I have.
Over extended period of time. Can you take us through as much of this as you can, and speak about the effect on your head as well?
It's actually Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so I'd like to start with that. And a lot of it does happen within the oldest institute in the world, which didn't go under examination, and that's the family. It's a place where people don't speak outside of, and it's a place where information just retains within the walls. A huge amount of children are sexually assaulted within the family, and it's not really discussed, and it should be, because of the impacts on not only the individual that's been abused brain, but the close proximity and the vicarious trauma in how everybody's central nervous systems function under such stress. And that's, I think, that is where the brain injury does come into it, because the central nervous system is damaged in the children and on fire in the adults when they find out about it. So it's a really, really hard issue to discuss. People don't like to discuss it, but it's part of this problem that we need to discuss the most. Because at the moment we've got some absolute champions rallying around within schools, and we've got Chanel Contos and Grace Taine doing some fabulous work in that space. But we need to open up discourse around the family and how so much of it happens within the family, and how that ultimately tears families apart and affects absolutely every relationship you have with all the other members of your family, which then impacts the brain, because it's just a continual cycle of chronic toxic stress. And the more I looked into it, the more I sort of learned. When I was a child, I was 7, and I was molested by my brother. He's gone now, but we can discuss this, that's fine. And that went on for a few years. He sort of mimicked different sorts of behaviours that he'd seen in pornography magazines. And I didn't really know anything different. He didn't really know anything different. And, that went on for a little while. Then along came, I did ice skating. I was a competitive figure skater in South Australia. And I had a coach that wasn't so pleasant. So that went on for about, it was probably about 11 months of just rape, where I just did lose count. But that took place over 5 jurisdictions. And when I went to the police, this is where it became really quite interesting. I had to sit and think about which jurisdiction, and 2 of them were international, I could think of the most things where I could remember decent enough evidence to make a statement. And because reporting it is all state-based criminal law. So that was South Australia. Ultimately, he pleaded guilty and was convicted, and so that was great. However, he goes on, and as a result, as it turns out, has been the cause of all the longitudinal effects on my body. The experience of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, come in many forms. I mean, sexual assault being one, abuse in the household, drug use in the household, all sorts of different experiences. Even now, cyberbullying would qualify, or anything that causes significant trauma in an individual. Can have really adverse consequences. Harvard Med and World Health Organization and the Centre for Disease Control are right across this. And the more adverse childhood experiences you have, the greater your body is at risk of contracting every disease known to man, basically.
I know that you were doing a master's by research.
Yeah, I started, my undergrad is industrial design, where I have a service design major, which just again looks at overlaying systems of different stakeholders, how they intertwine, how they work together, and how everything could be improved. And then particularly how that interacts with the people that use the service and the humans most involved with that. So it's very, very human-centred design. I then couldn't make up my mind. I kept changing my mind. The more I read, the more I kept changing direction. My supervisor was saying, just stop, I had too much information. I was sort of almost paralysed in that. But I was working with how important, obviously, education is. If we want to prevent things happening, we need to stop them before they start. I mean, that's primary prevention, simple. Anything else that happens after that is secondary prevention. So, you know, we're teaching people not to rape after they've already been raped. That's secondary prevention. You know, we've got, we need to understand how, you know, how our brains, we've also, there's just so many reasons why these things keep happening. But I kept changing. At the time when Chanel Contos came through and she was working on mandating sexual health education across the board at different ages and having it very consent-based, I decided again in my masters to change directions because someone's going to solve that problem and they've done a damn good job. So I then started looking more and more into the brain, which helped me understand more and more how damaged my brain is. I mean, I function probably a couple of days a week. Lucky today is one of them. It's a really complex trauma. Complex PTSD, I guess is where we'll go with this one. Causes chronic toxic stress on the system as a result of just being in overdrive and hypervigilant and living in a state of survival for prolonged periods of time. In the research, which is quite easy to find on the World Health Organization and Centre for Disease Control, it's like moving a car, you know, you're just redlining it all the time until something's just got to give. But the central nervous system in that state at the brainstem engages another nerve called the vagus nerve, and this nerve then goes into an involuntary state in a survival mode, which has horrendous outcomes on physical health over a period of time. The World Health Organization, anything over 4 adverse childhood experiences raises the risks of a person's life being shortened by 20 years. And that's a huge amount of time to. So I'm nearly 48 with, you know, double deck of aces, and it's really not a winning hand, I tell you. So it's really terrifying to know that, you know, any time any organ can just, it's susceptible to everything. Even cancer, which, you know, fingers crossed, but half of us are going to get it, really, aren't we?
It's okay. It's okay.
It's important, I think, that we understand the harm that it does just beyond, it does increase the risk of suicide by astronomical amounts. The risk of homelessness in youth is increased by like 15%, or something ridiculous, or 65%. There's 70% of addiction in this country is directly causal to child sexual assault, and that's printed in one of the national drug strategies. The Australian Childhood Foundation, they did a study they printed it in 2021, and they replicated a study that they had done 19 years prior. and the results hadn't changed, in so much that from a sample of over 1,000 mixed demographics, 85% believed that not believing a child caused harm. 70% of this same sample believed that children make up stories. So we have many people within that sample contradicting themselves, and many unaware of how their own behaviour and how their own brains contribute to these outcomes. So when we're having sexual assault take place within families or within situations where the perpetrator's known to those that the child discloses, it's a lot easier. Your brain goes into a state where it just does not like this information of complete emotional distress and discomfort, and we take the path of least resistance. It's natural law, so it's going to continue to believe what it's normally believed and discard the incoming information. And this all happens in the central nervous system of the adult to which the child is disclosing. It's a cognitive phenomenon called cognitive dissonance. And the more personal and more intense the situation, the greater the cognitive dissonance, and the greater the brain will work at finding emotional rest, however it deals with that information, whether that being believing or discarding it. And unfortunately, when you've got a sample contradicting themselves so greatly, you've got a risk, a huge risk, of that many children being disbelieved. And then as a result of that, their behaviour is going to be just, not considered normal, or become quite antisocial, quite troubling, criminal behaviour. They might start taking drugs. They end up on the streets because their parents will perhaps apply punitive measures rather than understanding ones. And the damage to these people is incredible. And then the more harm, the more intense things get, the more you explode and the further you push people away. And it becomes a really, really difficult experience to navigate when the people you need the most are the ones you're pushing the furthest away. It's really very difficult.
Well, thank you so much for educating us all today, Elise, especially with it being the month of...
Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I find it the timing quite divine. And so thank you so much for coming in, and thanks for educating us about this vital subject. And I look forward to talking to you again soon, babe.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much.